Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I have some bully romance recs for you, which I'm super excited about because I've never done this specific rec video before, so let's just get right into the books. So the first book I want to recommend is King of Hawthorne Prep by Jennifer Sucevic, I think is how you say it. I'm probably saying that wrong. But this one is, I will say, like, this one is not really standalone. Like, you're going to want to read Queen of Hawthorne Prep too. This one's really interesting because it starts out in the summer where this girl is sitting on the beach reading and this guy comes up to her and he's like, hey, do you want to like go hang out on my boat? She's like, okay. And they spend the whole day hanging out and she plans to hang out with him for the rest of the week that her family is at this lake house. And it ends up her grandmother passes away or gets really sick. And so they have to leave early. And she runs over to his house to tell him, like, I'm not going to be here, so like don't go looking for me kind of thing. And he's not there. Like, his mom answers and just sort of doesn't seem like she's really gonna tell him that she stopped by, and so she thinks she's got it all covered. She's like, hey, I've told him I'm leaving, like, it's fine. And she goes home, and they're not even like from the same area, so she sort of just figures she may never see this guy again. And with her grandmother passing away, her family ends up inheriting her grandmother's house, which is in this tiny little town that is actually named after them. And so they return to this house and they are going to school. She has a twin brother as well. And they end up at this school where everyone hates them. And one day she walks in the class and she sees this guy from the beach and she's like, oh my god, finally, like, I'll actually have a friend. And he is just like horrible to her. Like, he cannot stand her. He is now like bullying her with the rest of the school. And she's like, what on earth happened? Like, we were like so close in the summer, we were having such a good time, we were gonna hang out and whatever, and he just like all of a sudden cannot stand her. And I really like this one. I really liked the sort of reasoning behind the bullying in this one. Sometimes I find with bully romances there's no real reason why it's happening. It's just like, oh yeah, they all hate her, but it's like, why? I feel like this one really made sense, and I liked how sort of well thought out the plot was in that aspect. So this one's definitely a really good one for that. Next, I'm going to recommend Bully by Penelope Douglas. This video obviously would not be complete without this book. This is like the book that I base all other bully romances on because this was the first one I ever read. I think this was like one of the first ones that really became like mainstream, I guess, in the book world. And this one follows Jared and Tate, who live next door to each other. And one summer Jared just like goes to visit his dad for the summer and comes back, and all of a sudden he hates her and is super mean to her, can't stand her, like goes out of his way to make her miserable. And she's like, what the heck happened? Like, when we were kids we used to hang out all the time, like we didn't have these issues, and all of a sudden they do. And this book obviously follows their relationship. This is the first one in the series as well. The other ones in the series are also really good. A lot of them have like the bullying aspects in them as well if you're looking for that. So, of course, check this one out if you haven't already. Like I said, this to me is like the classic bully romance. Next is Cruel Prince by Jade. This one hit me harder than I was expecting. I did not cry reading this book, but when I woke up the next day, I was like distraught. Like, I found myself tearing up at like the most random times just thinking about this book. And so it's definitely got like some more like emotional sort of undertones to it than some of the other books I'm going to talk about in this video. This one follows a girl who is living in this town, and she is friends with these I think there's four brothers. And she ends up moving away one night, like just sort of out of nowhere. Her dad's like, okay, we're going, like right now we're moving. And she's like, what the heck? And so they move, and shortly after they move, she finds out that one of the brothers out of the four has died. And she tries to reach out to them. They're just like ignoring her calls, don't want anything to do with her. And she's like, what the heck happened? Like, I thought we were best friends, and now like I'm trying to be there for you and you're not letting me, kind of thing. And this one was just so good. She ends up moving back like after 4 years. After she moves, her dad gets arrested and she ends up back living with her aunt, going to the same school. So she's back with these boys again, and they all hate her, and she doesn't understand it because she's like, I didn't do anything, like I just wanted to be there for you and you wouldn't answer my calls. And this one is just, like I said, it's so good. It's very, like I said, on the emotional side if you like things with that in it. Next is Tryst 6 Venom, which is another book by Penelope Douglas, and this one is actually a sapphic bully romance, which is kind of interesting because I don't think I've ever seen another one of these out there. I mean, I'm sure there probably is, but I've never seen any. And this one follows two girls who go to this like super fancy private school, one who is from a rich family and one who is from the other side of the tracks, literally in this case. And it's just sort of their relationship. The rich girl kind of can't stand that this other girl is in her school and is like super mean to her all the time. And they obviously end up forming a relationship. But I just thought this one was really interesting because it is sapphic, and I've never seen, like I said, a sort of mainstream sapphic romance that's a bully romance. So that was exciting. And like I said, this one's really good. It's got that whole like enemies to lovers, you know, I hate you and I'm gonna be a jerk to you kind of thing going on. So definitely like perfect bully romance. This next book that I'm gonna recommend, I feel like I need to say this before I even tell you what book it is. I'm gonna put this out there now. This book is intense. This one is a lot crazier than a lot of the other books you may read. If you're like into the more darker books, you'll probably like this one, but if you're not into like the really sort of darker books, then you probably won't like this one. So I only recommend this if you're into like really dark romance. And this one is Fear Me by B.B. Reid. This one again is not a standalone. There is a series. I only read the first one, but it does end on like a major cliffhanger. So you may want to know that going in, that you're probably going to want to read the other books. And this one, like I said, super, super intense. This one follows Kieran and Lake. And Kieran has just gotten out of like prison or juvie, I guess, and believes that Lake is the reason for it. He got arrested on like a drug charge and spent a year in prison and comes back, and he's basically like, okay, you took a year of my life, I'm going to take a year of yours, and basically just like make her life hell for a year. And this one is, like I said, really, really intense. I cannot stress that enough. Like, if you are not someone who likes darker books, do not read this one. But if you like darker books, you might like this one. So that's why I'm putting this in this video. But I just want to be really clear that, like, if you're not into dark stuff, don't read this. But this one is, like I said, really insane. He is just, like, around all the time. Like, basically, like, stalking her, I swear. Like, it's just super crazy. Like, you have to read this one to understand it. I can't even, like, tell you what it's about, really, other than what I've already said. And it's just super intense, so if you like that, you'll like this one. Next is Lost Boys by Ava Ashwood. I have talked about this book nonstop since I read it. This is a reverse harem bully romance, which is why I think I like it so much, because it's so unique. And this one follows a girl who is super, super rich, and then her dad gets arrested for fraud, like in the middle of this big party they're throwing, and they lose everything, the house, the cars, like all their money, and they end up living in this rental house on the other side of town, her and her mom, while her dad's in prison. And she ends up at the school that she's never been to, and everyone there hates her because for one reason or another they all think that her dad had something to do with their families like losing their businesses or their houses and different things. And so they all just like hate her as soon as she steps foot on the campus. And there's these three boys, the Lost Boys, who kind of make a deal with her where they're like, okay, like obviously everyone here hates you and we all got beef with you, but if you like take this deal, we will be the ones to make sure that you pay for what you did, and the rest of the school will leave you alone. And so obviously she takes the deal and ends up like hanging out with them all the time. And one of them lives across the street from her, so they're like constantly watching her and things like that. And this one was just, I thought, really unique because I don't think I've ever read a reverse harem that takes place in high school. So I thought that was interesting and just like a more unique aspect to the book. Next is All the Little Lies by S.J. Sylvis, and this one follows a girl whose dad was shot, and then her mom ends up becoming a drug addict afterwards because she can't deal with the death. And so this girl ends up in foster care and is living in this new foster home and ends up back at this school with this guy, Christian, that she knew when she was younger, and she thinks, oh, like good, like we can be best friends again. And he wants nothing to do with her. He blames her for his mom's death, and she's like, I had nothing to do with that, like I don't know why you're mad at me for that. And all of these things sort of, you know, creating all this tension between them where he's just like being super nasty to her and she's like, what the heck did I ever do to you? Like I literally did nothing. And this one was definitely sort of unique in the fact that I find with bully romances sometimes when the couple gets together and the bullying sort of stops, I find that they become very sort of simple romances. I know not all bully romances are necessarily dark romances, but I feel like a lot of the times they just sort of fizzle out for me with that. And this one did a really good job of like incorporating the darker elements of the book even after the couple gets together. And so I really liked that aspect of this one as well, if you're looking for something like that that sort of continues on with the darkness even after they're sort of past the bullying hump. And so I did like that. And my last rec for today is Brutal Heir by Eden O'Neill. This is another one that I'm going to say is a little more intense. This book starts out with the guy killing a dog in front of the girl, and it's just intense. Like, there's a couple things that happen in this book that I was like, okay, like, that's a lot. And so this is another one. This one I wouldn't say is as crazy as Fear Me, but this one is like definitely up there. And so don't go into this if you don't like dark stuff again. This one is about a girl whose mom used to work for this boy's grandfather as their like housekeeper, so they lived on the same property, they were together all the time, and her mom ends up getting fired right after this dog is killed, and the daughter always thinks that that's the reason, like, because she witnessed that and the grandfather didn't want her to know about like how crazy his grandson is, basically. And so they sort of don't see each other for a long time, and then they end up back at the same high school, and he is still like kind of crazy, but also like focuses all his attention on her, you know. And this one again has got the bullying aspect obviously in the school, and he is just like always on her, and he's like constantly just like doing everything in his power to annoy her. He starts hanging out with her roommates like late at night, all night, making like loud noise and playing loud music so that she can't study or sleep or anything. Like, he's just constantly in her face and driving her crazy. And I really like that aspect of this one. I feel like he sort of went like a couple steps further than most people would. This one is also unique in that it is not a high school romance. This one takes place in college, which is sort of interesting because I haven't really read many like that, but it is something that I enjoyed, obviously being myself older, not in high school, but I'm not in college anymore either, but like just like older in general I think is good. And so I thought that was interesting with this one. This one is, I will say, a spin-off of another series, but you don't need to read the other series. I haven't read whatever that series is, and I totally understood everything in this book, so like don't worry about that if that's stopping you from picking this up. And so those are all of my recommendations for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new book videos every single week, and I will see you next time.